it's really self-knowledge paired with wonder
Mm.
and curiosity, right? Like how do we build our own awareness of ourselves and then have curiosity about why other people are the way they are, right? And there's this thing where we can approach it with kind of conflict or curiosity, right? We've probably heard that, but and that's where in design is so helpful. It's like why like why are they doing it this way? Why are they thinking this way? Why is this experience this way, right? And how do we approach things with wonder? I think those two things help us really move deep.
Greg, welcome to Empathy Led. How you doing, my friend?
Yes, sir. Doing well, doing well. Good to be here, man. I've been a long time coming. We've talked about it. I'm excited to be on. So good to see you.
Yeah, me too. We have talked about having you on for a long time, and for one reason or another, it never quite happened. But as the stars will have it, you are on for season
Here we
3.
are.
All right.
Yeah.
So I I'm a firm believer that in order to understand someone, you have the seed of the answer in their early childhood. And I've been trying to figure out creative ways to essentially ask this same question, trying to uncover some nuggets of information about your upbringing and your childhood. And what I came up with for this time is, if there was a camera following you around growing up as if it was a reality TV show, like what would we have seen? What would it have captured?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one, man. This is timely too because I've been thinking about this so much too. So much of our growth work happens by like reflecting on our childhood and where that came from. So um I'm just picturing myself wandering. I think you would have seen me wandering around a lot, you know, looking for random things to play with, making play. And I did a lot of playing by myself when I was a kid, I would say, make believe. I watch my own kids now picking up sticks and random things they find, and all of a sudden they're turned into objects and tools and all kinds of things. So I would say that I would have been wandering around a lot.
So why playing by yourself? Were you an only child?
I wasn't an only child. No, I had an older brother and I have two younger twin sisters, which I think once we got a little older, like I guess childhood more like in the 10, 8, 10 range, we were probably doing more playing together. Um, but I'm thinking like very early, right? Like the earliest summer memories I can remember are on my own. But even yeah, when we played together as kids, it was always make believe. Um, make believe being a grown up, and now I'm a grown up, and I try to make believe I'm a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. So how closely or far apart does your aspiration about who you wanted to be as a grown up map out to the path that you ultimately took?
I'm hopeful it's getting closer together now. In recent years, I've probably 2 years ago kind of woke up and realized those paths were very divergent.
Mm.
Um, and made kind of a conscious effort to really think about what that means and how I can move forward. Um, I think today, as I sit here right now, I'm doing a lot of painting in the mornings and then creative kind of brand and design work in the afternoons. And I would say that's very close to what I would have liked to be doing when I was a kid. It was, I'm exploring and playing and trying to come up with ideas and and do it with other people in a fun way. So it's getting much closer.
Good. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that detour so that we can bridge the gap between the young, curious playing you who
Sure.
aspire to grow up and be the same person who's playing, who is wandering, and then somewhere along the way, it seemed the path took you elsewhere, but then you have found your way back. Like, tell us about that detour a little bit.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I mean, one of my biggest memories when I was a kid was these Saturday morning art classes that we took at the University of Iowa. So this would have been like in the 6, 7, 8 range. Maybe a little older, but we did it back to back years. One of my mom's good friends was an art professor focused on early childhood art. I come to know this now that it was like so structured for kids in a cool way. Um, but it's basically we'd go there every week and you'd pick out of this whole menu of classes that you wanted to do, which I always remember the like schedule coming out and getting excited, like which one I'm going to pick. Um, Whether it's like the types of materials you're going to use or what types of things you're going to make. And then every Saturday you'd go there and you'd work on your project. And there was just a lot of freedom. It was like just show up, all the materials are there. It was a big warehouse. And I just remember being on the floor, like building with boxes and making these big structures, and always fascinated with buildings and kind of creating structures in that way. Um, so that was kind of early childhood. And then as I ventured into kind of high school and trying to figure out, all right, what am I doing for college? I had along the way started playing basketball. So I was also looking at getting a basketball scholarship and going to college. Um, but I think started to get that inkling of formation that it was like, well, you love design and architecture and making things. But like, you can't really just be an artist and like make, I had picked that up. It's like, so the profession I picked, I thought was architecture. So when I was in high school, I was like all-star basketball player, going to be an architect, going off to school. And then in college, I found myself in like, I think it was physics, applications, and calculus class to go through architecture, or to like I was getting a minor in physics engineering so that I could go on to architecture school while I was playing basketball. And I was getting a minor in graphic design, thinking physics, graphic design, kind of combine it, go to architect school. So yeah, sitting in this final, in this physics final, physics applications in calculus, which I didn't really even know was a thing. I realized very quickly that that wasn't for me. And it was just, I was meeting a lot of resistance. So I backed out. And meanwhile, I loved design. I loved graphic design. It came easy to me. I knew how to make things look good. It just felt right. So I shifted over to a graphic design degree. The whole time taking art classes at the college, but again, kind of just that mentality of I need a profession, right? Like I'm not going to come out of school with an art degree and go anywhere. So so that turned into a graphic design degree. So once I got out of school, then I was like, I'm thinking I'm going to go work at an agency, work at a design studio, do something like that. And some of the opportunities just didn't exactly line up, but I found a very cool, like what I'm realizing now was a very instrumental experience for me. My first job was a very small business. It was a family owned, mom and son. There was maybe one other full-time employee. There was a part-time retired warehouse staff, and then myself. And it was a catalog, like a mail order catalog business. So I was doing photography. I was doing catalog layout, a little bit of apparel design, very, physical graphic design material type work. And that was right in the transition of when people were really starting to get into e-commerce. Early Shopify days. It was like 2008, 2009. And so I kind of saw that coming, helped them realize that they needed a website, they need e-commerce. And that's really where I fell in love with like digital design and user experience design. And it was just very cool there. I had so many opportunities to learn about what it means to build a business, create a culture with a small team of people. My boss there was amazing at that. Just, I didn't get paid a lot, but he really did care about trying to, make sure that I had the right kind of, he'd bring me along to all the things, all the conferences he went to, all these leadership groups he was going to. So I got a ton there. And then I really did what was my first, I would say, like digital transformation, if you will, right? I helped them go from a catalog and retail company to primarily an e-commerce company, which included like organizing the warehouse operations and shipping and all these things when I was like, 24, 25, and just staying up all night, like figuring this stuff out because it was interesting and fun. So yeah, that got me really into like that creative problem solving side of like digital transformation. How can technology really help grow businesses in interesting ways? And so all that, at that point, quit my job. I was like freelancing on the side, getting some business going. And I had been there for about 6 or 7 years, and it was just starting to get a little stale. It was, I had kind of, I'm realizing this about myself, right? I like the big ideas. I like the transformation, the vision. But once it's kind of happens, I get a little antsy of like, all right, now we're just kind of going through the motions and repeating it and trying to improve it, which is good. And somebody else is probably very good at that, but I get a little bored. So I was kind of freelancing on the side, building a small team of clients, and realized I could go full time doing that. So it was at that point that I jumped and kind of started freelancing full time. It would have been like 2015, 2016, something like that. And that was fun for like 3 years. I built it up. That was a lot of energy, a lot of like learning new things, saying yes to everything when I was kind of trying to figure things out. And it worked. I was working a ton. I wasn't good at building a team and bringing people in and growing a company as much as I was just a freelance contractor, do the work, put the hours in, get clients and keep them happy. So eventually I was getting burnt out on that just because of the churn of hours I was working, quite honestly. And one of my larger clients that was kind of contracting me to do a lot of app design, basically, user interface, user experience design, was decided at that point that they wanted to build a team of designers. They had nobody. They knew their clients needed it, so they asked me, "Do you know can you do this?" So I'm like, "Yeah, I can do that." So I was contracting. So I kind of saw the writing on the wall that being my biggest client, like if they're going to build a team, I'm going to be removed from that eventually. So I took the opportunity to jump there and take a role kind of starting the design team in that organization and building all of their go-to-market strategy. So I was there for about 6 or 7 years, and that's really where I ended up with this big realization, because I kind of built the team. The company grew a bunch. When I joined them, it was about 45 people. And by the time I left, they had been bought by a larger firm of about like 27,000. So
Wow.
they went every year. We almost doubled in size every year for about 5 years. And that was the thing that really ended up putting me in a place that I didn't want to be. I like the small teams. When I joined, they were very much known for doing like creative solutions on top of some challenging platforms. And we were doing some really cool solutions. And then we're building a team, the company's getting bigger, the clients are getting bigger, and the projects turned into more, just textbook kind of implement software, digital transformations that turn into a lot of people management, program management, politics. And it helped me learn a ton. Like, I learned how important communication is and implementing technology and solutions, and empathy for sure, like helping everyone understand who we're designing and who we're building for. Like I learned all these things in this job, but I definitely woke up one day and was like, realized I'm not making art anymore. I'm not designing, I'm not creating, I'm managing and optimizing and doing these things. And that's where I was diverged from when I was a kid, right? Like exploring and playing and finding opportunities. And now it was like, all right, we have the playbook. We deliver healthcare and financial services and media projects. We do it like this. We go get the clients, and it's like rinse, repeat. And it's different people and personalities, and figuring out how to make that work. But the work was not inspiring. So that was the biggest thing that kind of triggered for me that like I have to start looking for new opportunities, and figure out how to get back to creation and kind of that early stage development. So
yeah,
long journey all the way back to there. But that's but that's it in a nutshell.
Absolutely. I mean, the reason I always love to hear people's stories is because you can really begin to see the patterns in their lives and the choices that they make. And because it was so obvious listening to you that the reason you left your most recent job was the same reason you left your first job, right?
Hmm.
And you even said it when you started talking about that phase of your life, that you are now realizing that you are somebody who get very inspired, very energized by that figuring out building phase. And once that phase is done and the process need to be optimized and managed, you kind of lose your steam. And it seems the pattern repeated itself at your last job, which ultimately led you to jump ship and to find
Yeah.
your way back to creating and building and all of that. You said something at the beginning that I always find myself giving as an advice to younger people who are seeking advice from me for what they should do with their career. And the answer is usually to not go for a big company right away, but to find a smaller entity where they can have the kind of experience that you described, where you get to try many things. You are part of building the machine and not just a tiny, tiny cog in a bigger machine that you don't even understand and you can really see in its entirety, where you get to have face-to-face interaction with the founder or very senior people who essentially become, if you are lucky, but most of the time by virtue of the size of the company, they become invested in your personal and professional growth. And therefore they do things for you that almost fall outside of their job description, just because of the kind of relationship you tend to build with people in those smaller entities. And I'm sure there are trade-offs, right? When you go to a big company and a big name, all of that. But if you're really somebody who's seeking to learn and to grow and to get your hands dirty and to try new things, I feel like there's no better place than a smaller entity under the mentorship of a really great boss.
Yeah, 100% agree. And there's two things I think I got really lucky on with both of my first two jobs, which the other thing early in your career that helps so much I'm realizing is consulting. Um, I mean, my first company was not a consulting firm. It was a very small business, right? But second company I worked for, being a consulting firm, you're you're seeing these new challenges every couple months, right? Every couple months, new project, new challenge, new clients. You're learning technologies, industries, people. So if you're, getting into a design career, product design, UX design, anything like that, I can't recommend highly enough to start in a consulting firm if possible. And the other thing, you make connections with people that you work with, like you said, the mentorship. Um, so many people you meet either on the client side or within your firm that end up being long-term people that you'll keep coming back to.
Yeah.
So yeah, both those things I fell into not knowing, not making intentional decisions, but were just kind of the options in front of me that I was very lucky with.
Yeah. And if you are a young professional listening to this, the last thing I will add to this before moving on is say yes. You will be asked in those smaller entities to do things that are clearly outside of your job description, but you will thank yourself for saying yes to all those seemingly unrelated tasks and opportunities, because that's actually the real wealth of being in those places. All right, let's switch gears.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear from you, and I feel like I've seen opinions about it online, but from your perspective and your experience, how will you describe to someone the difference between art and design?
Man, I should be way more prepared for this question recently. But maybe it's easy. I mean, art, in my opinion, art is you're just making something that you love to make. It's what lights you up. It's what comes easy to you. It's whatever that is. And art is very, very personal to every individual person. And you can make art that touches people, and maybe touches a lot of people, but the path to make art like that, I believe, is by making what you love. Design is intentionality around trying to make something that a broad spectrum or a specific audience is going to find appeal in. I think that's probably how I would
Yeah,
define and divide those
no, I
things.
love that. I love that. I mean, I feel like my understanding of art is very similar to yours. Is that through my art, I'm trying to communicate something about me. I'm trying to show you a slice of how I see the world, how I understand myself and my place in this whole thing that we call the universe. And whatever medium I use to do that, ultimately that's the same thing that I'm doing, right? We are all looking at the same thing, but I'm trying to show you how I'm seeing this thing that we are all looking at, or how I understand this thing that we all call life, or we all call joy, or we all call love, but
Mhm.
ultimately experience differently and understand differently. And yeah, that's what art is to me.
Yeah,
Um,
the interesting thing too is when you make something more specific and unique to your experience, it almost becomes more universal, and people find, and it feels so challenging to do, and you're like, why would anybody care about this very specific perspective of a thing that I have? But when you find that place and do it, and then you see the way people respond to it, it's amazing.
Yeah. So, what is the resistance then? Because I know in myself there is resistance. There is resistance in going deeper, and there is resistance in sharing with the world that thing that is way deeper about who I am. Even
Mhm.
when I understand intellectually that that is my way, and that is the way to connect with a broader audience, the way you are saying, most of us tend to be almost obstructed by this idea of not wanting to reveal too much of ourselves, and it usually and that lack of bravery usually shows up in our work whenever it falls flat. Have you been able to reflect what was the resistance, or do you experience a similar resistance?
I do. When you ask what it is, it can be a very ethereal question. Like, but it's my belief that we are all given this creative energy from the source, right? From our source of the universe, that is there to us, and the resistance is the devil, right? To not have better language for it, but like, it just is laws of nature. Like, we're going to have the creative flow energy, and there's going to be resistance, and it's always going to be there, right? And I think what how that resistance shows up for everybody is probably unique. It's honestly probably very unique, right? Formed in childhood, um, around how you perceive fear in the world, what you've been felt shame around. Um, all these things are present in everyone, and they don't go away, right? Like, this idea of bravery and like conquer your fears or be fearless is like in my opinion, a misnomer, right? Like, we
Mm.
have to learn, we have to be aware, we have to see our fears, we have to know. And this is the Buddhist mentality, right? Like, which never made sense to me until like maybe a couple of years ago, and I'm sure I still don't know it at all. but like, become friends with these things in your life, your fear and your shame. And the way that I am operating now, where I'm making art and building a startup, it's like, if I'm finding fear and resistance, then I know that I'm going in the right direction. So I'll try to continue to feel that, examine where is it coming from, right? Because it's different for everybody. And even for me, right? These things change, and I have new realizations about, why is this so hard for me? And then it feels like, as soon as you get a breakthrough, and you're like, oh, I got it now, I can do it, I did it, I put it out. And then you go back to do it again, and it's like, oh wait, I'm just going to meet this same fear. And that's what practice is, right? That's where you hope you keep trying and keep practicing, and it gets easier, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's why art and even building a business ultimately become these spiritual journeys, because in the process of doing art and the process of building a business, you encounter all those things, all those fears, all those insecurities. You become a little bit more familiar with all the layers that make up your ego. And you understand that while as a normal person, you didn't have to confront all those things, there is no way you can make art or build a business without confronting these things. And it makes art and business building, and I'm sure other things, whenever I think whatever you do at a high level, even when you hear an athlete talk about their experience, the higher up it goes, it always becomes spiritual. When you hear artists talk about their art, it always ends up becoming spiritual. And when you hear entrepreneurs talk about that process, a lot of it also feels very spiritual. And I think is because of what you just described, that there is, you cannot do these things at that level without having to unlearn, undo, and confront and make friends with your fears and with your insecurities and with all those things that shackle us and create obstruction to the source.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it helps to, you know, what comes to mind is it helps to have a partner in it too. And whether, you know, whether it's one person that you're actually partnered with building a business, or it's your, you know, wife or significant other or good friends or mentors, right? Like we can't always see the things that are blocking us as well as other people. And we also need, there's just something to the thing where, so my partner Breanna in at the family room, the company I'm building now, is I can go to her and I know that I can be 100% vulnerable about anything I'm feeling, the challenges that are coming up for me, and she's gonna not change her opinion of who I am, right? And that's what's so important. We all think that we're wearing these masks and these suits and trying to, you know, be somebody. And if we take it off and bring it down, like, then, oh, now I'm not that person and it's going to change their opinion. Right. So having that person or people where you can really take the mask off and almost test run this thing, right? It's like, you know, I never realized all the fear I faced, even in consulting, right? I would constantly be procrastinating work until close to the deadline, and then all of a sudden I'd go in and do it all and go give the presentation, and it would go great and it'd be, you know, amazing. But I would live all this stress and like angst just getting started, right? And it's all based in this core fear of like making a mark on a page and showing it to somebody and getting judgment about what you made. And when I had somebody there that could give me that space and say, yeah, I totally get it, and it's helping me, and I can say it to her that I know this is a problem for me, and she can help hold it with me. It's like that power of doing it with someone else so you don't feel like you're alone on it too is so helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, you know, whenever I reflect on where most of my fears and procrastination come from, and it usually is some variation of entangling my sense of self and worth with whatever outcome I'm chasing. And if my worth and identity are on the line whenever I show a project or whenever I show up to perform, then the stakes are way, 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 way too high, right? And therefore, I delay that process because, well, I don't want to lose my sense of self or my sense of worth, because if I win, I'm a winner. And if I lose, I'm a loser. And that's really something that, as an athlete, I didn't understand. And therefore, I really, really dreaded competition. And I'm trying, now that I'm older and a little bit wiser, to pay more attention to that. Every time I'm entangling myself and my worth to something that I cannot control or that's external, it's time for me to snap out of it. But obviously, it's easier said than done. And all of that is part of this journey, for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned competition too, and that's been, I'm curious to hear you talk about it now, like how, you know, because making art again, I realized, yeah, very quickly, as soon as I detach from the outcome of what I'm making, my work is way better, right? But then as soon as I show it to somebody and they go, oh, that's really good, then now next time I sit down, I'm like, oh shit, now I got to make something good again. And it's just a cycle. But I also have this, and my kids are young, right? And they're getting in sports. And so we talk about winning and losing and versus having fun. And I'm so conflicted because at the same time, if I'm going to make art, like I do have to be good at it if I want to keep doing it. Right? I have to figure out how to make art that people will buy and that I can, put out in the world so that I can keep on doing it. Um, so yeah, it's so hard to figure out that balance of how do you stay detached from the outcome, but at the same time you still are trying to win.
Yeah.
Right. Right. I'm curious to hear what that brings up for you or how you handle that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, fundamentally, I try to, you've probably heard me talk about goals versus outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, that's fundamentally how I handle it. I remind myself that an outcome is something that I cannot fully control. And therefore, to put so much energy onto something that is outside of my full control is not very helpful and usually create a lot of anxiety. Winning is an outcome, it's not a goal, right? So if it's an outcome, what are the inputs that are fully within my control that I know if I do consistently, the likelihood of creating the outcome after dramatically increase? And I think that's what the top athletes do. And that's why fear is a little bit more manageable to them, because they put their focus not on how the press is going to react or what's going to happen if they miss the shot at the buzzer or what the media or what the teammate. They put their attention on their preparation and their performance, because those are the two things that are fully within their control. And just so happen that if you do those things consistently and put your energy and attention there, the outcome more often than not tends to go your way. But whenever you shift your attention away from these things that you can control and put it on something that you cannot control, you always create that kind of anxiety for us. So for me, is really, even with the players that I coach as a soccer coach, is we do not control winning and losing. What we control is our preparation and our performance. And luckily, those things seems to have a symbiotic relationship where if we prepare well and if we really focus on our performance and perform well, more often than not, we win. And for me, so that's how I try to reconcile those things is what is it within my control? And am I really exercising that control to its fullest? And usually when I'm not exercising the control to the fullest is because some of the energy that could be used here is being wasted worrying about the outcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that's a hard one. Yeah, but that's great.
So I want to talk then, we talked about art and how personal of a journey is versus design that forces you to account for the experience of other human beings and to understand what they want and how whatever you are creating for them fits in the context of their human experience. So what is your process for getting that data that is so important in order for you to design?
Yeah, I mean, my background in doing kind of user experience and digital transformations is using human-centered design process to do that. Um, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. It's interesting how there is a process, right? We can map this all out. I just want to make sure I say up front, like, none of this really works if you're not spending time with yourself and learning about yourself and building empathy for yourself. Spending quiet time. I know you've talked about this a lot, but in prayer or meditation or contemplation in silence, right? Like if you don't have that groundwork, these steps are really just turn into check boxes and gates, and you can kind of like get people rallied around the process, and you get some inklings of it. But it just goes so much deeper if you're spending, you can do it with yourself first, and so that you can see it in others. But the process, right, is really just it's talking to people. right? I think I've built a million decks explaining the process and like why we do human-centered design and this whole approach, but it's talking to who your users are, who your audience is, who your buyers are, right? I'm going through this process right now as we build Family Room. We've for 3 months just interviewed people. We interviewed families that had gone through hospitalization experience. We interviewed hospital CEOs, IT and tech people. We interviewed hospital nurses, everyone involved in the experience that might be using the product or buying the product, so that we can get an understanding of what they're going through and what they're thinking, right? What are their core kind of needs? What are their motivations? What are the kind of key tasks and things they're trying to do? Which of these things are met and unmet? Like, that's how we try to find the opportunity for it. And I believe, going through that process, you get a bunch of data, but you also get so much soft, kind of just qualitative understanding and nuance of what the whole kind of collective looks like and what the experience looks and feels like, that helps you as you kind of sit in the solution and try to figure out how to meet some of these needs. Yeah. So yeah, that's the core of it. There's a bunch of different techniques and obviously interviewing techniques and workshops that we run and go through. It's really trying to get people to talk about their experience and who they are, both as people and as their roles in kind of the business that we're working for.
Yeah. Why is self-awareness such a critical part of that process?
Oh man, I don't know. I think I'm feeling this right now in myself. I was thinking about this today because I thought we'd probably talk about this, and it's a tough one to kind of explain. But I guess I had it said to me in a way that when you realize that you have a soul, then you can all of a sudden come to the realization that everybody else does too. And it will help you be more connected to people in those conversations. Both in business when you're trying to understand them, but also in the world when you come across people that you maybe don't agree with or whatever it might be. And it's not anything specific that you do in those moments, but the practice that you've done leading up to that will help you see them more as the people that they are.
Yeah.
Why that is, I guess I don't totally know, but I've definitely seen it kind of come to life in my own life as I've gotten more kind of steady with my kind of meditation practice and own kind of self-awareness and self-growth.
Yeah. I feel like listening to you, I feel like you kind of already answered this question when I asked you about the difference between art and design. And in art, you said that there was something paradoxical about making something for yourself that speaks to a core truth, which then becomes universal. I think that's the answer as well, is that in order for you to see and to understand other people, you need to understand yourself, because there is a shared humanity and the shared human experience that ultimately is the thing that you are seeing and hearing yourself in other people. That's why you empathize with them so much. And I often say also that the starting point to empathy is self-awareness, because the deeper and the better you know yourself, the better you are able to hear and see yourself in other people, even when the experience doesn't exactly mirror yours. Mm-hmm. And you understand through self-awareness that reality is really a subjective experience, and that there are multiple versions of it that are just as valid. And that's something that you do not get unless you go within. Unless you go within and unless you develop this practice for self-inquiry and self-discovery, we tend to think of reality as this objective thing. And this is why there is so much bickering and disagreement, because I want to impose my version of reality on you without understanding that yours is just as valid. It doesn't mean that I will agree with everything that you say, but I understand that you are having a subjective experience, and so am I. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the answer. I think that's why then you become a better interviewer. You start asking better question, deeper question, and you begin to recognize these things that live within yourself whenever they show up in other people. And it just allows you to understand it better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something that triggered for me too is really, and I had it wrote down to talk about, but it's really self-knowledge paired with wonder and
Mm.
curiosity, right? Like how do we build our own awareness of ourselves and then have curiosity about why other people are the way they are, right? And there's this thing where we can approach it with kind of conflict or curiosity, right? We've probably heard that, but and that's where in design is so helpful. It's like why like why are they doing it this way? Why are they thinking this way? Why is this experience this way, right? And how do we approach things with wonder? I think those two things help us really move deep.
Yeah, I swear, I think that's the definition of empathy. That's it. That's it right there.
Mm-hmm.
Is deepening your understanding of self and approaching others with wonder and curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I love it. I love it. You mentioned already in passing several times family room, but you haven't really explained what it is and what it is that you guys are building. So tell us a little bit more about family room and the mission that you guys are on.
Yeah. Family Room is a company I'm partnered with, co-founding with Dr. Breanna Hetland from the University of Nebraska Medicine. She has been for about 7 years researching family engagement in the hospitalization experience and specifically in the ICU. So our mission as a company at Family Room is to humanize the acute hospitalization experience.
Mm.
And that's really means everyone involved, but we're specifically focused right now on family engagement tools, or we're really calling it family activation tools, right? We're often see that when people have a critical illness, it often pops up kind of out of nowhere, and or they have a traumatic accident, and all of a sudden somebody gets a phone call and they have a loved one that's in the ICU, and their whole world starts spinning. Right now, they're like going to the hospital. They show up. They're trying to navigate a ton of uncertainty, and there's just not a lot of tools out there to help them. And yeah, that's our goal, is to offer kind of bedside tools that can help them provide care for the patient, check symptoms with the patient, help give them information about the hospital, about the ICU, who are all these roles, what do all these things mean. There's also kind of a self-help and self-care aspect to it, as the patient's going through all of this trauma and health issues, but it's extremely traumatizing on the family and on caregivers to have to kind of put their life on hold and try to help this person that's in need, right? So yeah, it's been an interesting journey to kind of really get a good understanding. I started, as I said, like a couple of years ago, looking for opportunities to get into the startup space and into a little bit more kind of creation and innovation. And in that exploration is how I met Dr. Hetland. And yeah, coming into it, you think I have this big background in human-centered design, technology. I've worked with major healthcare systems all over the country implementing technology. So I'm like, yeah, it's technology, right, is going to solve this, even naively, even though knowing I'm a human-centered designer. But once you get into it, and it's like, man, there's so many challenges and complexities in that experience, and so many people involved, physicians and specialists and nurse care teams, nurse managers, hospital leadership, family, and let alone the family dynamics of just an individual family that's going to show up at the hospital. How do we know what that dynamic is, right? There's a lot at play. It's been really interesting to get deep into the problem and really see it kind of unfold. Yeah, and I think we have some cool solutions. We're heading towards a clinical trial, so looking at the date, but yeah, we have a clinical trial that will be starting at UNMC in January of next year. We're trying to kind of get an MVP stood up quicker than that, so we can start piloting the solution and start getting feedback.
Right.
That big moment where we actually put something on paper and put it out there and get people to judge it, right?
And at this stage of the company, what are the assumptions you are making that are informing the solution that you are designing, that are informing that MVP?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we know that. Well, I shouldn't necessarily. I mean, through all of our research, right? the experience is extremely ambiguous for people. Families go in, they're not sure. They might not even know what happened, right? Because this is all of a sudden just popped up. So they're trying to figure out what happened, what's going on now, and then what's going to be happening. And so the communication that happens between the care team, the family, and the physicians to kind of paint that picture and clearly tell that person to give them a little bit of an anchor that's a major pain point that we're trying to solve for. The other thing is families feel extremely out of control. They're overwhelmed by everything that's happening, and they're typically sitting in the room, and care folks are coming in and kind of putting them to the side a little bit, right? And doing everything they do, and then leaving and huddling up and then coming back and talking to them, but giving them a bunch of information that they can't really process. So they're very out of control in that way. So we're trying to give them information that's going to help them feel a little more grounded with where they are. We're also giving them tools to actually be hands-on with the care that we're hoping will kind of address that emotional need as well of that feeling of not having control. Those are really two of the big ones from the family side. We also know from the care team side, obviously nurses, the whole hospital system is very strained. So I hate saying that nurses are necessarily burnt out, but they have too much to do, right? Not every nurse is burnt out, but they're overburdened with work. And so how can we activate and engage the family in a way that will relieve some of that burden from the nurse and from the care team is also critical. And then just talking about empathy and kind of holistic healing, it's like, how can the family give the nurse a better idea of who that patient is as a person, so that when they're in the ICU, they often are like ventilated or they have all these tubes, right? And so there's a place where they can upload photos, they can talk about who the patient is as a human being in order for the nurse, physician, care team to really take that in and get that kind of intangible connection to who the patient is. So those are a few of the things.
Yeah, I love that so much. As you were thinking about it, I had this weird parallel, which probably is the wrong parallel to make, but here we go. Of a lot of the time in consulting, we come into people businesses acting like the experts, when really, in fact, they are the expert in their business, and we bring a certain set of expertise plus a different perspective and vantage point. That the real approach, the right approach, would be to work as a team, and not for the consultant to sit and lock themselves in an ivory tower, knowing that thinking that they have all the answer. And like when I was listening to you and thinking about my own experience in terms of the dynamics between like the professional, the healthcare professionals, and then the family, is like sit in the corner. We get to you when we have updates and we will tell you what to do. But to your point, there's so much information and data this family has that you do not have, and that will allow you to offer an even better care to these patients. And that if you invited the family to serve as a team member in this process, your ability to treat this patient will be dramatically improved, because we have data about them as people there. And some of that, they acknowledge that they need. When they ask, for example, are they allergic of anything? Is there any family history? Right? That's them acknowledging that the family does have some information that we don't have. But if we really wanted to be intentional in that process, then how far would we take it? And it seems to me, at least in part, that is what you all are trying to figure out. It's like, how do we take a truly holistic team approach to care that involves the doctors, the nurses, and the families in that process? And it's super, super exciting. Super, super exciting.
It is, yeah. No, 100%. You described it very well, and Dr. Hetland talks about that a lot. There's things that we're not, like assessing a patient's pain, right? Not to get too far into a tangent, but so a family member could be so much better at assessing, is this person actually in pain or not in pain, right? Like, and things like that, or anxiety, right? And then what happens is a care team is kind of trying to assess this, not to mention in the ICU, a patient can't really communicate often. So now the nurse is trying to make a judgment and oftentimes over medicating, not to make a blanket statement, but we want to avoid over medicating for pain and for anxiety. And that's, you're right, 100%. That's where families can be such a critical role in the care and kind of well-being of the patient, for sure.
And pain is such a perfect example for people to understand this, right? Because we all have different pain threshold and tolerance, and the people closest to us know that about us. Like my wife has a really, really high pain tolerance. So the moment she starts complaining, I don't even think twice because I know otherwise it doesn't even register. Like it's not even a thing that she brings up. So the moment she starts talking about she's in pain, that I know the pain is probably unbearable for like a regular person. And yeah, I feel like pain is such a perfect example for really the kind of insight that family members have and therefore can bring to the table in those kinds of settings. So probably don't have an answer to this question, but how are you guys then thinking about the solution to this? Is this a SaaS? Is it like a new department unit in the hospital? A combination of both? Like where is the MVP leading you all?
Yeah, we're like right in the mix of kind of fleshing that out and figuring out what that is. And I'm sure it will change many times. I mean, my opinion is, I think obviously, a SaaS model from a technology side makes a lot of sense. I think there is a bigger need for really hands-on training, care protocols. In my opinion, this is larger than build an app and deploy an app across multiple hospitals. It's really like, what are the training materials? How are nurses taking in this information and then responding? How can we adjust some care protocols? In a long-term vision, this is like, how does a hospital get certified in being a family, care center, right? Like the stamp of approval that like they've gone through these trainings, they understand this, they know how to use the technology, they've implemented these protocols, and then we have a technology that will help make that happen, right? And facilitate that. But so much of this, and I tell Bree this all the time, it's like our goal is to provide technology that will help all of these humans just be better people in these interactions, because all of these interactions still are going to have to happen in person, talking in person, making decisions, like, being in the room, providing the care, all those things are together. But if we can have some technology that helps the family be a little better, helps the nurses be less burdened, help everyone just be a little more sympathetic and empathetic to the situation. So that's a little long-winded, but I do see it as more than just implementing technology and kind of throwing it at it. It will eventually be bigger than that in terms of training materials, care protocols, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, now it makes sense. When I talk a lot about empathy in business and in marketing, and at times it feels like an indictment to the people within these industries. But really, what I'm pointing out is it's not that those people lack the ability to empathize. We know that that's something that we can all do. And I even take it a step further to say that I think that's what most people want, right? You will be hard pressed to find a leader who disagree with empathizing with employees. You will be hard pressed to find a marketer who disagrees with the idea of empathizing with customers. So then the next question then becomes, what stands in the way? What stands in the way of our natural ability to flex that empathy muscle and our willingness to do so? There's something that stands in our way. And as I'm listening to you and thinking about, like, you won't find a doctor who doesn't want the best outcome for the patient. You won't find a nurse that doesn't want, but yet we personally go through these experiences where we have the worst experience at the hospital. The nurses are rude, the doctor has poor bedside manners. And I think for me, when I listen to you and the solutions that you all are, is identifying the friction, the things that are pulling us away from our capacity of being human, so that we can be just that, so that we can be this thing that we are pre-wired to be and this thing that we want to be. And it takes me even back to the conversation we were having earlier about what stands in the way of our ability to reconnect with our deeper self and to show up in the world as that, right? Is all these things, all these obstacles, all these layers that are now impeding in our ability to just humanize and empathize and sympathize with the very patient that we know we want to help and cure. Yeah.
Yeah, and what comes to mind is it's that, what is the resist, like why are we not able to do that in these different industries and spaces, and when it doesn't happen, and it feels, it's because we don't make space for ourselves, right? We don't make it goes back to that, how this all empathy starts with that self-knowledge and kind of wonder, right? And if you've got a physician or a nurse that has a family and is working 12-hour shifts, and they're overburdened, and they're showing up with everything they have going on in their life, and they're just boom, they're right in it. And now, what's my first task? First patient, go, 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 go. And we're not, I shouldn't say we blanket, but like, people aren't taking the time to sit in silence for 10 minutes a day. One of my mentors, Jim Detmer from the Conscious Leadership Group, not necessarily a personal mentor, but somebody I've learned so much from, boils it down so simple. He's like, you want explosion and transformation and growth, sit in a chair for 10 minutes a day in silence and eat your own projections. So everything you think is happening, assume that you're doing it, and then just sit in silence, right? And it is funny, but I think it's so true. Like, we don't build space for intuition and silence in businesses, and we're so focused on go, 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 get things done, productivity, growth. We're trying to go here when really we need to go here. We need to like go here and figure it, and let those things come to us, right? And I think we find the same thing in all of these different industries. Yeah, I think it's just a product of our society, sadly, right? Like,
Absolutely.
that go mentality.
Absolutely. I mean, I am finding the same answer as well, that it's impossible for a leader to empathize when they too are burned out, overburdened, when they too don't take care of themselves. How can you possibly hold space for someone when you are drowning? How can you possibly empathize with someone when you are burning out? So the step again is take care of yourself. Take care of yourself, sit in silence, and in that, you will have the space and the room and the perspective and the clarity to act as the empathetic human being that you are wired to be. Right?
I want to share something with that real quick. I know
Please.
We're probably going to get close to time.
Please.
Because I just want to share my own journey with that, in a way that meditation and being in silence is a hard thing to do. And we meet resistance there. And I just want to encourage people to be, number one, we have to do it. Like, we can't think about it. It doesn't work if you just, for a lot of years, to be vulnerable myself, right? For a lot of years, I was like the type of person that meditates. I would be like, yeah, I believe in meditation. I get it. Like, I meditate, but I was really doing it once a month even, right? Or like every few weeks, I might like sit in silence for years. But the difference between that and actually doing it and sitting and just literally set a timer, 8 minutes, right? Start with 5, and start with two, right? But like, yeah, there's the phrase, right? It only works if you work it. Like, it only works if you actually do it. And the hard thing too in our world, in our society, is like, the feedback is not immediate. You don't just go, oh, and the point is not to go, oh, well, I meditated today, so I'm going to have a great day. It's like, I meditated for 2 years, so now all of a sudden I'm a different person. It's like very, very different thing. But I just encourage people, if they're trying to do it, to also it helped me. Somebody said it's a great place to have compassion for yourself. So stop saying that you can't do it. And when you sit down and you're not able to, right? Because you sit in quiet and then all of a sudden here comes a thought and you realize that you're thinking, it's a great time to go, oh, there I go. I'm thinking. Good job. I caught it. Now I'm doing it, right? Be positive with yourself about it when you're sitting there, and it can really change your perspective on it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And it took me a while to even speak publicly about the fact that, I meditate, but luckily it has become something that is gaining ground and is part of the conversation. But I think one of the many, many things that set people up for failure when it comes to meditation is this false understanding that you are only meditating if you are thinking about nothing. If like no thought, like the moment thoughts come up, you have failed.
Yeah,
it's this expectation of like I should be sitting here with my mind completely still and quiet, and I cannot do it. The thoughts keep coming. Therefore, like I suck at meditation. But like to your point, no. That is the exercise. The exercise is to watch the thoughts emerge and to come up and to pay attention to what comes up for you. And after a while of being the observer of the thoughts, well, they subside and then they come back and then you catch them again. And it's that exercise that I feel like people need to stop expecting that their mind will go completely blank when they sit in meditation. And every time I hear someone who say, I tried, but I suck at it, it's some version of that. Of I suck at it because I was thinking, because there were thoughts in my mind, But no, it's not going anywhere. It's the ability to observe the thoughts without being involved with them or to catch them.
And it's intention, right? Like there's Thomas Merton says, with God, a little bit of intention goes a long way.
Yeah.
So like, if I just sit down and try, like that's intention, and that goes a long way in the universe. So whether, you said it great though. That's exactly the experience.
So, that's the end of the PSA on meditation. Please do it. And if sitting quietly is not your thing, maybe start with other forms of mindfulness, journaling and yoga. Even yoga has become this exercise because when we do it properly, it forces us to confront our thoughts and to be still. So now we've added all kinds of funky things that now turns into fitness. But that's a different tangent.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a plug for painting or art. Take 10 minutes, you have kids, get some crayons, put some paper down and sit in silence and just make something.
Absolutely.
Get some color on some paper. It's great.
This is actually a great place for us to end. I know recently you're probably still doing it. You are partaking in this flower a day challenge.
Yeah.
What is it? How did it come to be? And what have you learned about yourself so far?
Oh man, this could be a whole separate podcast. So I'll try to keep it relatively brief. When I quit my job, last day was the last day of February. So March 1st, I was sitting at home. I think it was a Saturday. Yeah, no, it was a Saturday. And I just felt this burden because I was like, man, I don't have a job anymore. I know I'm going to build a company, but like we're doing that and that's going. But I felt this, like I needed to be doing something else. There was something I was just feeling. I was like, man, I know there's something else here. Because I know I have some runway where I'm going to be focused on the business. I quit the corporate world. So I'm like, all right, this is my opportunity. So I was sitting at the dining room table and my son was doing art. And I realized I'm always trying to get him to do art. And meanwhile, I have not made anything artistically, like made art in 15 years. So I was watching him and he had like markers out and paint and crayons. And he's literally grabbing like left hand, making a mark, right hand, mark, to like marker and crayon at the same time. And just no thought about what he was doing, just doing it. Right. So that was very inspiring. And I had seen some artists on Instagram doing like drawing a hand a day, flower a day, it's a practice in art to try to get some discipline. So yeah, I thought all right, I'm going to start. It's spring is coming. So I said for the spring equinox, I'll do a flower a day until the spring equinox, which was like March 19th. So I grabbed Owen's, my son's drawing, and with him, I started out left-handed because I was thinking, well, then if it sucks, I can be like, well, it's left-handed. So I had no, it was like very helpful for me to get over that barrier of fear of like, I have to make something good. So I drew on top of what he was doing, and then, yeah, posted. It's probably a failure to post it on Instagram. It definitely along the journey made me realize, how quickly we get attached to the outcome. As soon as somebody likes it, comments, does it, the next time I sit down, it's in my head, right? So, but I did it, and yeah, day one, March 1st, and yeah, since then, I mean, the journey and what I've learned, I mean, it's been almost immeasurable. It's like I've known I'm an artist my whole life, and I haven't been doing it. And so the line between thinking about it and doing it is significant. So now that I'm doing it, I'm feeling more like connecting more to my childhood, like we talked about at the top, and being more of who I am, quite frankly. And I think showing up that way at work and how I'm building a company and with people and conversations like this with you, like it's impacted everything in my life. And it's been learning about fears, right? And like things are going well, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm a genius, I can do this, I'm like, this is easy. And then all of a sudden 3 minutes later, it's like, I'm never going to make anything good ever again. I don't know how I did that, but I'll never be able to do it again. So going through those waves and then trying to like find the level and how do I just develop a practice. And yeah, like artists are going to listen to this as well that have been like 20-year artists and be like, this guy's been making art for like 6 weeks. So I don't mean to pontificate on it too much, but it is a practice that is so eye-opening for you if you indulge in it. Yeah. And it's play, and it helps you just get things out and play and be in spaces and make things that you didn't know you were going to make and didn't know you were going to do. And then being able to flip then and apply that to things we're doing at the family room and how we bring intuition into our process and play into our process is so cool. So yeah, it's changed everything in that way.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I already knew this was going to be a very, very interesting conversation. We've had many of these offline, and I was really, really excited about the prospect of sharing one of those with the world. And I'm so glad we did it. I think you're somebody who from the first time we met, we connected because there has always been this depth about you while we were working on something where we were trying to build a brand design for a company. There was always this depth and about you and your work and the way you see the world that I resonated with. And whenever I can say things like universe or soul to someone and they don't roll their eyes, I know that is a kindred spirit. And in you, I have definitely found a kindred spirit, and I'm so glad our paths have crossed. So thank you for being on the show.
Same, Junior. I would say all the exact same things about you. And yeah, glad to have done it.